Hello everyone, my name is Katy of Greenland Quilter. Welcome, welcome. And I have a new guest. Her name is Mary, and she's going to tell us about herself and her channel, and then we will start the interview. So go ahead and take over.
Well, hi, Katy. I'm excited to meet you and to be able to visit with you today. It's so much fun to gather with other quilters, and especially when we have so much in common, we just could talk and talk forever, as we have been doing already. So that's always enjoyable for me. But I think as someone who has a YouTube channel as you do, it's just the best when we're able to meet other people that are like-minded so that we can share this crazy hobby of ours. But I wasn't always a quilter. I actually, just kind of a brief history. I was born in Illinois, born and raised, went to college in Iowa, University of Iowa, where I got a degree in pharmacy. So I'm a pharmacist, and met my husband there. He's a physician, ER physician. And we raised a family, 4 children. They're all married, 2 boys, 2 girls. They're married and have wonderful spouses. We have, from between all the kids, we have 15 grandchildren.
Wow.
And, yeah, and in those 15, we have 2 sets of twins. So, and no twins in our family, so we don't know where that came from. We have a bunch of left-handed people too that we don't know where they came from either, but we're all related. We're all part of the same family. And I always wanted to sew, but my mom was not a sewer. My grandmother, you know how it says it skips generations. My grandmother quilted, and she had a really cool sewing machine, but she would never take it out of the cabinet so that I could see it. I only knew it was in there, and it was all closed up, and I really wanted to see it, but she said I was never old enough, and she didn't want me to touch it. And I was so intrigued by that, that I really wanted to learn how to quilt. So when I was 10, I got a paper route. And nobody in my town had paper routes. Girls didn't, only boys did. And I really wanted one because I needed to make money. And there's not a whole lot of ways a 10-year-old can make money. And my dad was a factory worker. We didn't have a lot of extra money around, and sewing machine was at the bottom of my mom's list. She would have never bought me a sewing machine. So she said, you want one? Earn it. I'm 10, I mean, how do you make money to buy a sewing machine when you're 10? But I saw a thing in the comic section of our newspaper that said, if you want to be a paper boy, contact the paper. So I wrote this big thing about how I was a girl, but I could still be a good paper boy. And they called me, and the guy was really nice. And he said they had a route that was open, and I got this route. And I worked really hard. I saved all my money, and I earned $100. And it was enough that I could go to the local sewing machine dealer. It was actually a Bernina dealer, and he had a used Kenmore machine that was $150. So my grandmother, who would never let me look at her machine, gave me the extra $50 and said if I would make a dress for her. That never happened. But, and she reminded me of that almost till the day she died, that I never made that dress for her. But that was not my thing. Quilting and clothes making are 2 totally different things. And so it just wasn't going to happen. So anyway, but that aside, I had the sewing machine. Well, my mom really felt like that was a waste of time, and it even bugged her more that my grandmother gave me the extra money. So she would never let me buy fabric or anything. I had to earn my money, and we had this little shop that I went and I bought 3 yards of fabric. I was so excited. Well, she would not. She kept saying, it's a waste of time. You're not going to do this, So at night, when all my friends were out running around, I was hidden in my sewing room, my bedroom, with my sewing machine, sewing, just thinking nobody could hear me. We lived in this little tiny cracker box. There's no way nobody heard me sewing in there. But anyway, I was sewing away. Well, I had cut this whole shoebox full of triangles, and no seam allowances or anything, but I had this book. This is where I got it. It was called I'm sorry, they're mowing my lawn outside. The Standard Book of Quilt Making. And it's from the 1940s. And it's just filled with these kinds of patterns in there, just all written like this. So I bought this book, and I thought, okay, this is really good. I'm going to find a pattern in here. And it started out at the beginning talking about planning your quilt and how to buy fabric and how the woman is supposed to, have dinner on the table first before she goes and sews and all that kind of stuff. So I skipped all that because that didn't pertain to me. And I jumped all the way to the end of the book. On page 237, and I found a pattern, and I decided I was going to create this Dutchman's puzzle pattern. It's right. It's really hard, and there's no way I could do it, but I thought I could because I was really brave. And so I cut all these triangles with no seam allowances, and they were in a shoebox. And then I realized I couldn't sew anything together. So I put it in the closet up in the corner, and I don't know whatever happened to it. I'm sure my mom threw it away. And that was kind of the end of my quilting while I was in high school. So then once I got out of high school, I saw this magazine, and quilting was kind of coming back in the late 70s. And there was this picture right here of the quickest quilt in the world. This is the magazine. And so I made it. I made the quickest quilt in the world. It's terrible. I mean, it's really, very, but it was mine, and I loved it. I made it for my brothers. I made two of them. Yeah, and so this was it. I mean, at that time, there were no calicos. There was nothing for fabric. I had to just pick. These were supposed to be, the light ones in the center were supposed to be dark green, but they didn't have any more. So that's what I did and put it together. And I still have it. And I was so happy that I was able to make this. And then I took a class after that, and then I got better at it because I learned how to do it, the way that you're supposed to. Then once I finished up that, then I just kind of, I started going to quilt shows, and I joined the guild, and I really got involved and really, bought every ruler, every piece of fabric I could find, every gadget that came out, I bought it and tried to get really good at quilting. And I got better. I was better at it. I was doing well. And then I got involved with Project Linus. And that's an organization here in the US where we make blankets and quilts, Afghans, fleece blankets for kids that are seriously ill or traumatized. So I opened a chapter in my local area, Central Illinois, and I started just, having blanket making events, which included all those things, all different types. I'm not a crocheter or a knitter. I just make quilts, but other people were, and we gathered together. And so I did that for a while. Then I became the national vice president of the organization back in 2001. And in the process of that, I started up what was called the Project Linus Mystery Quilt Challenge. So I started to design patterns at the time for Project Linus, and then making patterns in like an 8-week mystery quilt challenge for about 9 years. I named it after my little grandson, Luke, who passed away when he was 2.5. And so that's where it got started. And then as I started, each year I'd create another one named after another grandchild. And this year was the 9th year. We put it on pause just because it was a lot of work. And, we're going to wait and see if we may start it up again. I don't know. But that's when I started my Joyful and Merry Quilting, which is basically just bringing quilting to those that quilting brings me so much joy, and I want to share it with other people. So I operated on the premise with my son. He's the one that started this all up with me. He's the brains behind my brawn, and we just try and do what we can to share quilting with the world as best as I can in a joyful and merry way. So that brings you up to date.
So how old is that quilt that you just showed us?
This one, I created it, I think it was probably in 1979, 80, something like that. I know it was before 81. So that's where it came from. But I mean, look, I didn't realize you shouldn't put when I put the blocks together, I didn't realize you were supposed to flip the blocks. So I've got 2 stripes right next to each other. It's just crazy looking. But
hey, all about what you learned.
It had borders on it, but they kind of rotted off. So I took them off, and I put just a binding, or a red binding around the edge. And anyway, it's fun to look at it to see that I've gotten better.
I have a quilt from my grandmother, and it's at least 150 years old.
Oh!
Every time you touch it now, it just disintegrates in my hand. Yeah.
I wish I had some of my grandmother's. She started a grandmother's flower garden. My mom knew nothing about quilting. And so she took that quilt and sold it at a garage sale after my grandmother passed away. And I'm like, Mom, I would have taken it. And she had no idea. But she always says, after I got so involved with quilting, and she loves it now, and she's very supportive. She's passed away, but she was very supportive for a lot of time. And she said, if I would have encouraged you, you would have never done it. So I take credit for all that you do, because if I would have said, Mary, do it, then you wouldn't have done it. And so since I told you no, you're like, I'm going to do it anyway. And so I do give her credit.
You should be happy that you chose that to do, not something that would have eventually got you in trouble. You know what I'm saying?
No kidding. That's what I keep telling her. I mean, it's like, Mom, geez, I could have done so many things with my friends, and instead I hid out in the bedroom sewing. You should have been grateful.
Yeah, not every child wants to be sewing on a machine when they're a teenager.
No kidding. Yeah. But
well, what's the name of the quilt behind you?
This one it's called Embracing Our Scraps. And this was a Joyful and Merry challenge that we did back in January. It started out, it was just a scrap busting method that I have these lives kind of like what you do, where I have night owl quilting and then I have daytime quilting. It's just every other week. Night owl quilting is at 10 o'clock my time, which for you would be in the middle of the night. But we just gather together and we do different, I just show different things like, we made like this, we made little bags one time, we made these one time, we made a pillow. Last night we did, or the night before last, we did this, we made these little casserole hot pots. We just kind of do different projects and I talk. So, that's kind of it. And at the beginning of the year, you know how your scraps just kind of get out of control? And mine were totally out of control. I had this basket and I'm redoing my sewing room here. And so I had to do something with it. So I have a system and I was going to show everybody my system, which I did. Well, then I got everything all caught up. And these were a bunch of Lori Holt Riley Blake fabrics that I had, and they were just in their own bin. And they were all cut into nice strips. And I thought, I got to come up with a pattern for this. So I came up with this pattern and introduced it at the next Night Owl Quilting, and then everybody wanted the pattern. So I wrote the pattern, and then the rest is history. But I love it. It's just one of my favorites. And it came out, it was a 21-day challenge. So I finished that start to finish, cutting all the way to binding and labeling in 21 days. I did it every day. So there's a video on the website of every day how far I got. And it was a lot of pressure, but I wanted to do it. I knew I could, and I wanted to get it done in 21 days. So I offered everybody the challenge if they wanted to. I think most people just thought I wasn't going to do it. So they had to tune in to see if I did. And I did.
Okay. So you mentioned your grandmother was the quilter and your mother wasn't. See, my grandmother was a quilter, but my mother made all our clothes when we were growing up, us girls. And then that same Singer sewing machine is what and it was one of those really heavy metal ones. And probably from the late 60s, early 70s, maybe.
Yeah.
And
they were all heavy.
Because she was making just simple little dresses that we went to school in. And when I became a teenager and my parents joined this church, we were no longer allowed to wear certain kinds of clothing. And so it was cheaper for me to go to the fabric store and buy fabric. I could make free dresses to that $50 dress in Cato's at the time.
Wow.
And so it was way cheaper to make. So I made all of my dresses, my skirts, my shirts, because I just couldn't stomach the idea of paying high price for one outfit when I could make it with my mom's sewing machine. And so that's what I did. Like all of my older teenage years, that's what I did. I really never bought anything from
that's a talent though. You have a talent. You're able to do that. I tried, but my stuff looks so homemade. It's like there was no way. Now quilting is different because quilting is precision work. It's like you sew precisely on a lot, not everything, but on a lot of stuff. And I'm very good at, the keeping things, precise. But when it came to anything that I had to just use my own imagination, didn't have it.
I wish I'd have got my mom to teach me how to do handwork because I can't do handwork at all.
Yeah.
I suck at it big time.
Oh, I did. I do. I've done a little bit, I've done a little bit of that too.
Yeah, maybe one of these days maybe one of these days at one of the quilt things or something that I get to go to, maybe they'll have a class of how to hand sew.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff is coming back too. It used to be that everybody hand quilted or it wasn't considered a quilt.
Yeah.
And then it kind of moved on and people started machine quilting, and then the quilt shows are like, well, we can give you a category, but you better tell everybody that you're a machine quilter, you know, because this isn't real quilting. And then it got to the point where people started using the computerized machines, and then that got even more complicated. And now a lot of the hand stuff is coming back, when, you know, the hexies and all the different people are doing a lot of the bindings by hand. And there's a lot, you know, everything makes a cycle, I think. And it just seems like it just comes back to some of the fabrics, like this fabric that we used. It reminded me of the calicos that are in that quilt. And this is new. This is the Lori Holt, or yeah, Mercantile it's called. Yeah. And I just happen to have a jelly roll that I did. But, you know, it looks like all those, you know, those fabrics that we used a long time ago are coming back. So.
Yep. Okay, so we're gonna start asking questions. So let's see here. You've already answered some of them. How many years do you think you've been sewing and quilting now?
Well, probably seriously about 30 years. It, you know, when I finally really got into it, when I was just playing around with it and I didn't really have any instruction, I don't really count that. But when I really seriously started, it was probably in the early 90s. So about 30 years.
So what are your favorite styles of fabric?
Well, this really always catches me. And I don't, the Riley Blake is always kind of something that's been, you know, I just love everything they do. And I don't know why. You know how you look at something and you gravitate towards it. And this was one. And then, oh, this one, we did this pillow in one of our things, but this was, this is the B Dots fabric that's also Riley Blake. Not intentional, it just happened. I just got that. So I tend to go towards those. I'm not really as into the modern look as much as I really want to, but my daughter-in-law is. So she kind of got me hooked on that a little bit, where I've been trying some of the more modern looking prints and trying to incorporate those into patterns, because I got to expand my horizons. You know, I've got to quit doing the same thing. It used to be all I ever did was a log cabin. I love log cabins. And everything I did was a log cabin in some form, because I really enjoyed that. And then I tried some different things. So I've been trying to challenge myself to do, you know, a little bit different and to explore different fabrics. So I do have some. I haven't done a whole lot with them yet, but that's kind of where I go. I do have, every once in a while, I'll throw in some batiks and try and do something. I've got a really beautiful batik stack that I've got a project in mind for, and it's gorgeous. It's just got every color in the rainbow in there, and I'm excited to try it out. I just haven't had time yet. But, you know, just a different look is what I guess I'm going for.
I'm totally smitten with batiks. I probably have 7 finished quilt tops.
Oh, well, I saw it. You did a video a while back, I don't remember when it was, where you showed some charm squares that were batiks that had like sea people. It was like a sea. Oh my gosh, it was so gorgeous. I mean, there are so many beautiful things that are created with those fabrics. And then when you put them all together.
That batiks are changing a little bit as far as the way they look. I'm not
the patterns.
Yeah, the patterns have changed. They're not weird patterns. Some of them are actually starting to look like something. So
exactly, and that's what I thought about that one. It was just, now I did a bag. I don't have it close. I don't have long enough arms to grab it, but I did a backpack with it out of batiks that we bought in Hawaii, and it had turtles on it. Oh my gosh, it was so beautiful. And she had so many, I couldn't even choose what I wanted. But like you say, they were different. They were actually images on there rather than just all of the designs that we normally consider a batik. Just gorgeous. I mean, they've just opened up a whole new window.
Yeah, they have, definitely. Do you have a favorite designer of quilt patterns?
You know, I usually do my own.
Like me, you don't.
Yeah, I don't use other people's patterns. I usually do my own. And so maybe long ago, I probably bought books that I just never did, you know, it wasn't my thing. Not that I'm an artsy quilter, because I had somebody that really criticized me when I said that. I said, I'm not an art quilter. And she said, quilting is an art. You need to understand, quilting is an art. And this is, when I do my quilts, I'm an artist. And I'm thinking, I didn't mean to disparage you, you know, but I personally am not good at creating something that's not, you know, structured. But when I do, it's usually something like, you know, that I've just put together myself.
So my future goal is I want to make a quilt that has 100 different colors of batiks in it.
Ooh, that'll be beautiful.
And I left QuiltCon. I'm like, if they can do all that with color, I know I can with 100 colors.
Oh, yeah.
Just got to come up with an idea of how I'm going to do it.
I've been really fascinated with the miniatures, the 1-inch squares, and I've tried a few, but I'm not as accurate as I want to be yet. But I've come up with a system that I think is going to work. But I could see doing like a small, it's a trip around the world. That's what kind of my thing was that I was looking at. I guess that's kind of what, when I say that I come up with my own, I like to use the traditional patterns and go from those, the traditional blocks.
Probably modify them like I do.
Right,
Like
exactly.
I don't like empty space in the middle of a star. I don't know why, but I don't. So first thing I want to stick in the middle of it is a pinwheel or a 4-patch or a 9-patch or something.
Yeah. I love that.
In the middle of that to get rid of that empty space.
Yeah, I don't like when I've got the same fabrics that are meeting 4 squares.
Yeah.
I got to put different stuff in there because to me, then just cut the big fabric piece, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so that answered that question. As a quilter, is there anything you have learned that you wish someone had told you in the beginning?
Oh, tons of stuff. There's so many things, you know, and I try and share those on my, I teach a beginning quilting course. And it's called Beginning Quilting from Novice to Confident Beginner. And I take people from knowing absolutely nothing about quilting and give them those tips as we go along to create a basic quilt pattern. And those kinds of tips that we learn and pick up along the way, I think when we share those then with new quilters, they don't make all the mistakes that we made. That's the problem being a self-taught quilter. You self-teach yourself and then, you know, the mistakes that you make, you don't even realize until you learn to do it the right way. And not that my way is perfect or the right way, but it works for me. And so when I pass those tips along, but some of the things, you know, like this is, you know, some products somebody will suggest to me and then I always try them out. I do some product demos on my videos and I just find that there may be something that's just hidden away that I never even heard of. And somebody will say to me, have you ever tried such and such? And I'll look through my drawer and I have it. You know, I bought it sometime and I never even opened the package. And so I'll look and go through that. But there are so many things, too many to even, you know, I did a video on 10 things I wish I knew as a new quilter, and it just talks about your basics, you know, using a walking foot. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people that have asked questions about their quilt and saying, I don't know why it's all wrinkled up. And it's because they didn't use a walking foot. Such a simple remedy, but you know, yeah.
This thing is a pain in the butt to get on my machine.
Mine is the same way. Is yours a Janome machine?
It is. Yeah, it's a Janome
they changed
it. And man,
I know.
They
changed it. It used to be, it just had a thing that went down and you just screwed it on. And now you got to hook that thing in the back. I mean,
there's a bar on the back. You got to tag with it while you're winding it up the screw hole.
I know.
And in a live, I was binding a quilt and someone says, you know, your stitches will look, because I was struggling with the stitches were too tight, even though I had it set on like 230, you know, and that should give me a little bit longer length on the, and it was because my quilt wasn't moving quick enough through the, and it has plenty of feed dogs. But someone says, you need to put your walking foot on there because it'll help pull the quilt through there, and you're not, and it'll make the stitches more even. And so we did this on a live, and let me tell you what, there was a time where I was ready to throw the whole thing out the darn door.
I know what you mean. I actually went online and watched a lady do it, and I did it along with her on my machine. I mean, I wasn't on a live, I was just doing it myself. Yeah. And I didn't know I had to push the little thing in the back to make it actually start going.
Yeah, get it on there just right while it's sliding onto the screw.
I know.
Don't lose the screw because...
Yeah, I don't know why they changed it. Because I have a 6600 and a Janome, and it is a charm. It works great. And then when they got this new walking foot, I don't think it does any better, and I think it's really hard to apply. But I have a little teeny Janome that I use for my demos and things. It's a 3160, and that walking foot is just so easy to use. It goes on there, and sometimes I think, why didn't I just keep that machine and not buy the big?
So this is a different one. For the 6700P, there's an HP system on this Janome, and so I haven't even used that end of it. So I picked this up from QuiltCon, and it's going to have that same little thing right there, that little bar, but it's supposed to work with the other plate. And I have been told many times that when you switch to HP and get used to the mechanics of it, you'll never go back to using your machine the other way, because it's
we do get used to it. You know, it's just like doing Zoom stuff. You know, I mean, it's like when the first times I did it, I had a black screen and I didn't know how to remedy that. You know, and after a while, you get better at it and better at it. But there's always a glitch. There's always a glitch.
When you first started creating quilts, did you have a vision of where you wanted that to go? And if you did, how has it changed over time?
You know, originally, I just wanted to make a quilt. You know, I just thought they were so beautiful, and I wanted to do. I didn't really think. I thought what I did was, you know, the end all. I didn't realize there was so much out there, because we just didn't have. There was no internet, so I didn't know other than what I then learned at Quilt Guild. And when I started to go to quilt shows, and then I saw all these amazing things, and that's when I kind of exploded. It was kind of like the Industrial Revolution of quilting in my mind. You know, it was like, oh my gosh, look at all the wonderful things I can do. And that's where everything, I didn't really have a goal in mind. I just wanted to learn. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to take the skills that I had and get more complicated. So that took me from just creating the log cabin like I did to, then I started condensing things down in smaller blocks, and then I tried miniatures, and then foundation piecing, and then applique. And so it was like every time I learned something new, then I kind of got on that kick for a while, and I made a few things out of that. Then I'd learn another new thing, and I could incorporate that into what I did. So I found that I just love to learn, and I love to share that then when I've learned something new, so that other quilters can expand, because you get bored otherwise. You know, it's like with anything, if you do the same thing every time over and over again, it gets boring. And I like to be able to explore new avenues, so that I can actually take the new skills that I've learned and make something like, you know, something like this that I probably, I would have never done, you know, anything with scraps a long time ago. It's like I bought the fabric, cut the scraps off, threw them away, you know. And then I started thinking there's a lot of valuable stuff in there. So it's like each time I try something new, more techniques and tools, and my horizons just get broadened every single time. So I can't really say I see an end in sight by any means, but rather I just see new projects around every corner, which I love.
That's cool. What do you like best about making a quilt, and what do you love doing the most? Piecing?
Yeah. There's some good, I think we all have our favorites, and this is really weird, but I love cutting all the pieces out. I know a lot of people hate that. I love it. I label everything. See, I'm a pharmacist, so I like counting pills. I like making sure my label is on my bottle, you know, and there's no wrinkles in the tape, you know, and I like knowing that when somebody comes to pick it up, that if they're there, it's already finished, you know, you know, so that's how my mind works. And when I'm quilting, I kind of get in the same, I kind of have the same mindset when it comes to that. I like what I do. I like taking everything and putting it together in a way that I feel like, you know, I've done a neat job, and I start out with everything, I think, with the cutting perfect, because you can make your cutting perfect. Once you start going through the process, you know, it gets worse. So you piece your stuff together, and you can still get them perfect when you trim them up, and then you put them together in your blocks, and then you can, you know, points start to be a problem. And so you can work on that. My least favorite part, so I love that whole process. I love making the blocks. I also struggle with, I don't like making all, you know, like if I'm doing a large quilt, I don't like making all the blocks and then putting them together. I like making a block, putting it on the design wall, another block on the design wall, sashing. Now I've got two. And so that by the time I've finished all my blocks, my quilt is put together, unless I have to arrange the colors or something. That's different.
Like that too.
I love that way. You know, I just feel like I like seeing the progress, and I don't see it if everything's sitting on my table in a stack. I like to see it on the design wall, but you know, that's weird.
It's like those little X's over there. I've been cutting as I go along.
See,
I have the background cut, but the color part of it, I've been cutting as I go along.
I love that. That's my way.
See what it looks like.
Me too.
You know, get through it.
That to me is that the satisfaction, because I think that's where a lot of people end up with all these UFOs in a box, because they just never saw what was going to happen. And when I see that, I love that. But my least favorite part, my total least favorite, is ironing, backing, and piecing it together. I hate that part. I hate putting it together. I like getting the 108 wide if I can, but if I've got to piece it and then cut it and then iron it, I hate that part. So that's, if I could pick my least favorite, borders is probably my second least favorite, but ironing, backing is
that's interesting, because I don't like doing borders or making the sandwich, but I love binding, and I really don't know why.
I like binding too. Yes.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
You don't like borders,
I like
binding.
binding.
It's the same thing almost.
I know.
I don't like the binding, but I do.
I even take a picture of it when I'm almost to the end, and I take my last stitch, and I take a picture.
Yeah, all done.
And then I show everyone, Yeah.
So, out of all the quilts you have made, which is your favorite type of quilt to make?
Oh, I should have brought it down. I love the piecing, and I do have a long arm machine, but I don't have a computerized machine. I do a lot of ruler work. I've got all the rulers, but I'm not super good at it. So I do very basic quilting. I mean, I can do lines, I can do in the ditch, but I can't do like the feathers or all the fancy stuff. Or if I try and maybe do like an outline of something, or something, that's a little bit free form, I'm not always happy with it. So I think that to me is the hardest part, is to create a design that I think is going to highlight the quilt, but that isn't going to overtake it, because I'm not, an expert at quilting. I would prefer that my stitches are hidden away, in the ditch somewhere, just because I'm just not. And I don't think I'll ever get real good at it unless I'm on a computerized machine. I've had it for a very long time, and it's just, some of us just are more talented at that, and that's a difficult thing for me.
How many quilts have you made, or do you have?
I have no idea. Hundreds. I don't know. See, I make a lot for Project Linus, and I just have no idea. It's been a long time. So, and the thing is, I tell everybody now, take a picture of your quilt, write it down. I never did. I've got so many quilts that I did and I gave away. Most of them get given away, and I just never wrote it down. And I couldn't even imagine. I mean, if you figure, I don't know, maybe even if I made 10 a year, which I know some years I made more than that, 30 years, that's 300 right there. So
just
a lot.
You can say you've made at least one a year. That's
30. at least 30
right there. Yeah.
At least, and I know I've done way more than that. So
besides your grandmother being a quilter, is there anyone else in your family that's trying to learn or doing it? Or
well, my kids, my daughters have all learned how to quilt, and there was a situation with Project Linus where when the shooting happened in Uvalde, and we were invited to make quilts for a special donation. And so I got all my family members involved, even my sons-in-law and my sons, everybody made one. And they learned enough from me that they were able to do that. That was kind of cool that they did that, and that we were able to share in that. But my son, Alex, my youngest son, when he was little, he'd help me baste quilts. That's in the olden days when I'd pin baste on the floor. And he was always the one he was the pin closer. He'd go along, little guy, and crawl all over there. And he just loved doing that. And then as we got, he was the one that encouraged me to do this with Joyful and Merry Quilting. And so, and it was probably about, maybe 10 years ago that he wanted me to do, or not that long, maybe 5 years ago, that he wanted me to do it. And I just wasn't ready. I didn't feel like I could. I had a lot going on with Project Linus, and I just didn't feel like I could. And then when I was ready, finally, it was amazing to me how much he knows about quilting, just what he's learned, and then what he learns from me and editing the videos and all that stuff. So I said, I think he could probably do it. If he wanted to. He's got to do the computer stuff, but just the experience he's had with me, I see all my kids have kind of been able to, at least do something. They've all made a quilt, each one of them, boys and girls. So, and the grandkids too, which has been really fun.
So what is your go-to sewing machine, and how many sewing machines do you have?
How many? I'm so embarrassed.
Don't be, because How many some people have already?
I do have a lot. I have my big, nice, fancy machine is my Janome. I can't think of the number on it. It's sitting over there. And it's just the big computerized with the light that comes on and everything. I got that a couple of years ago and I love it. It was kind of, then I have two of the 6600s that I really love. I have my little travel machine that's a 3160 Janome, so that's 4. Then I have my long arm, that's 5. Then I have a featherweight, that's 6. I have a treadle, that's 7. Then I have 8 small Janome gems, so that's 15.
Wow.
And because I take those to classes and things when I teach, I have those. So that's 15. Then I have an embroidery machine that I don't know how to use very well, a brother. So that's 16. And then I have another, just a small travel machine that, so that's 17. There you go.
So how did you get involved with Janome?
Well, the dealer, Stewart Sewing Machine in our town here, the first sewing machine I bought from them was an Elna. And then, and that I used until I used it up. And then I went back to her, and she's a brother and a Baby Lock and a Janome dealer. And so I tried out the machines there, and I just, you know how you kind of get one that you like, and then you get used to the setup and all that. And so it's just for no particular reason. Like my first machine was a Kenmore, just because that's what was used and on sale, and I bought it. But then it just happened to be what she sells, and I'm used to it, and I've really liked them. I haven't ever had one I didn't like.
Yeah.
So the brother machine is different. It's still it has the embroidery attachment and all that, but it's just a different setup. And I'm used to this. No matter what size Janome I have, it always seemed to they're similar, and so it's just easy for me to use. But no reason. I had Bernina a long time ago. I did sell that one. And again, just because we didn't have a Bernina dealer here, and I'd moved to the area, and so we did have the Janome dealer, and that's what she talked me into. So that's what I bought.
That's awesome. While we were out shop hopping, we got to see all kinds of machines, and I finally saw in person the M8. I want the M8. I think the M8. It's they discontinued making the M7, but the M8 has a stitch regulator on it for free motion quilting.
Oh, see,
and the neck is nice. Just a tiny bit longer than my 6700.
That's the issue. The problem is on my machine without a stitch regulator, I can't do it. I mean, I've tried. I can do, I set my stitch length at about a 3/4 when I'm sewing, when I'm just quilting. And I can do the straight lines and all that stuff on my my regular machine. But if I drop those feed dogs and go around, it looks awful. I
haven't tried the free motion on mine yet, but
I just can't. I just don't have that pull. I'm just not good at it.
I think I've gotten pretty good with straight stitching, so that's okay.
And I think that looks wonderful. I think it looks good. Like this one is totally all in the ditch and then 1/4 inches along the sashing. That's all it is. It's real super basic. But I'm not looking at the quilting where I know a lot of people do, and that's their preference.
Yep. Do you have other hobbies that you participate in?
I don't have any time for anything else.
Okay.
This is my life. Quilting is my life,
Well,
I don't know how, I can crochet a double crochet and a single crochet, and that's about it. And I've done some, a little bit of that. I've made prayer shawls in the past, but I'm not, nothing fancy by any means. My mom was a beautiful artist. I didn't get any of that talent. My son is a musician, and I didn't get any of that talent, but I'm I applaud people. I'm a great audience. And so, I do what I can to let everybody know how much I appreciate their work, but I don't have any of that in me.
When did you start your YouTube channel, and what were your goals then versus what are your goals now? Well,
we started it was back, actually, kind of a crazy story. During COVID, my son is a voiceover actor. And so what he does is he does commercials and things, like he's done for IKEA and Cheetos, and he's the background voice when it comes to this, or he does announcing, and he also is a singer, but He has that's basically been what he's done. And during COVID, things for everybody just really got tight. And so that's where he was just in need of new clients. He was just really in need of new clients. And so I was just like, somehow he needs new clients. I just, every day, I prayed for him every day that he would get new clients. And one day, he had talked to me about doing this, like I say, years ago. And one time I just got this distinct impression to call him and tell him, I want to be your next client. And so I did. And he's like, I'm all ready to go. He had everything set up. He was just waiting for me to let him know. I mean, we're talking 5 years in between him telling me and me doing this. And he came down in 2 days. We had the YouTube channel in the process of being set up. We started up a Facebook page. We didn't think anybody knew that it was there. So we were just kind of playing with it. Well, it turns out that people located it right off and started asking me questions and things. I was like, oh no, now what do we do? So we started to come up with tutorials and tips and all that. And, you have to get 1,000 people before you even, get any kind of, start moving up the YouTube ladder. And we did, we had 6, we had 6 followers, or subscribers. So we were pretty excited. It was Alex and me and a second account I had and his wife. And, so we had 6 people that were in there. And then it just started to grow a little bit. So our whole point was, with the Joyful and Merry Quilting was, in the past, I've run half marathons. And so the lady that I didn't start doing that until I was in my early 50s. And the woman that I kind of modeled it after, her name was Joy, and Joy Joelsen. And she was in her 80s and started running marathons, and she was amazing. And she always said, I'm going to die running. And she did. But she was just my inspiration, and her name was Joy. And so I thought, Joyful, I thought, what a perfect name for her, Joyful. Joy, she's so joyful. She always was in all of her articles and things. Well, then growing up, my name Mary is such a plain name. And I used to tell my mom I hated my name because it was so plain. And she said, Mary's a beautiful name. And I'm like, no, it's everybody's name, Mary. I mean, it was like, I just was not happy with it. Well, then I thought, well, maybe Joy, maybe I need to do something with Mary to take Mary to the second level. So even though it's spelled differently, Mary, Mery. So that's when I decided that I would do, I did a running blog about being joyful and merry. And I did that for a long time. And so that was kind of part of it. And so I kind of hung on to that name and then brought it. And I thought, oh, quilting, it's so perfect because it brings me so much joy. And I want to share that joy with other people. They don't realize there are so many people out there, and I know you know this, that, they just, either they're, for one reason or another, they can't gather together with other quilters. They either, have health issues, or they're caring for someone, or they're just, not able to get out because of work, and they don't have the time or the family responsibilities. And there's a way, that's where YouTube has kind of united people that way, where we can just come together this way across the miles and learn about where we're from and, our homes and all that kind of stuff. And share quilting, something we all love, without getting into all that other stuff that tends to clog up the media that we have, the social media that we use. We don't talk about that. We just talk about this thing that we love. And we have people that are of so many different backgrounds and so many wonderful places that they've come from. And we just, gather together. So that was our goal, was to bring people together, like-minded people, quilters, and teach them. My tagline is, I'm always trying to be joyful, but I will always be merry. And that's what it's true. I'm always trying to be joyful. I feel like when we're not we choose joy. We're not always happy, because sometimes things aren't, they just don't go our way. Everybody's not happy all the time, but we can always be joyful. We can always express joy when we're encountering other people and we're around them. So that's kind of my thing. And our page is just that we just share the joy of quilting, and I try and be merry in the process. So
well, that's great. That's a great mindset to have, especially in this day and age. We all need all the
it's been a year.
Positivity we can get. The last pandemic. I would say that things have slowly progressed and changed since 9/11.
Oh, definitely.
You know,
And that's kind of when I got involved with all this, more community quilting for that very reason.
We as a country, thought we were invincible and strong, and no one could come in and do what happened,
No kidding.
in Pearl Harbor, but
it happened. Yeah, and there's so many things. My dad's from Eastern Europe, and he suffered quite a bit during the war. And my grandpa was in a concentration camp. We're not a work camp. We're not Jewish, but he had my family was Polish, and that was the next worst thing. But we had a lot of terrible stories that happened because of all that interaction. But I saw my grandparents turn things into a joyful experience as a family, in spite of what they went through. And I see that, and I think sometimes I get discouraged by what I go through. Whether it's health or family. I mean, we lost a grandson at 2.5, and I think it was the worst day of my life. And as I look back on those moments, I think, but here I am. I got through it. We get through it. We do what we can to try
as much as we can. I mean,
yeah. I mean, water under the bridge, which sounds very callous and at times when I say that, but there's nothing we can do about some of the things that have happened. And we can wallow or we can move forward. And I think, that was kind of my mom's thing when I was wallowing. And she gave me the old kick in the pants and said, you're not helping anybody this way. You need to change your attitude a little bit, which I did, and was able to bring myself out of that sadness. But it never goes away. It never does. But we grow from it, and we become better people because of it. And I think I would have never had been able to empathize with others the way I can now, had I not been through what I've, different circumstances, in my life. So, that kind of thing.
Saying that I grew up in, it was, my mother used to say this all the time. She says that misery loves company.
Yeah. Oh, my mom too. Yeah, totally.
That's true. I mean, if you want things to be more positive, you have to figure out how to get around it, the negative part of it. Sometimes it's hard to get around it, but other times you can get around it with no problem.
A lot of times it's hard. I mean, we get a lot. There's a lot of scars that come with living, and we all go through it. Nobody's life is perfect.
Right.
We just don't always know what goes on behind closed doors. So we don't know where people have been. And that's the other thing with Joyful and Merry Quilting, is just the whole thing that I've had people that have confided in me in many ways, just basically letting me know that they've been through tough times and they really appreciate the camaraderie of quilters. Nobody else gets that. Only quilters understand what this means, that we all have that camaraderie. And
it's the same thing as being a master gardener with a bunch of gardeners around you. You have that same, same, I'm trying to
just the love of whatever it is. We're like-minded people. And like-minded people gathering together and getting rid of all that other stuff, that outside stuff, and just focusing on this, I think is, very healthy. I think it's healthy for our minds, healthy for our bodies. And I think that's what keeps people. I mean, we have a lady in our group right now. She's 99 years old, and she has been active quilter for, as long as I have known her. And she often says, this is what keeps me alive. The fact that I have more to do. That's what.
Yeah. You've got this is what keeps you moving forward, and
I know,
not sinking into, because, I suffer from, one of my things I suffer from is depression. My progression is not as old, as bad as most people's are, but every now and then I'll feel that little, I don't feel like doing anything attitude, but most of the time I kind of just keep on moving.
Yeah, it's that's all we can do. I mean, what's our choice if we don't? The choice, the other part is not good. So
no,
we gotta
it's not.
we got to figure out the way to go forward. We do. Sometimes we take a couple of steps back, but the fact that we move forward, is that's the plus. That's what keeps us going. Yep. Anyway,
do you have anything else that you would like to share with us that you haven't shared with us so far before we move into rapid fire?
Well, I think I've probably told you just about everything about my life. So.
Yeah.
No, I think I'm pretty. I don't know. I know there's plenty more. if you want to, I have on my podcast, it's called Quilt Talk, and it's on our YouTube channel. And sometimes I get into all kinds of stuff like quilt police and all that kind of stuff where I can try and guide people in a joyful way to make others, not ascribe to that sort of thing. But when it comes to just regular stuff, no, I think
okay. All right, then
cool.
let's play a little rapid fire. Okay. What 5 things should a beginner quilter learn about to help them become good quilt makers as they learn?
Well, one thing is cross pinning. I do cross pinning, and I think that's really important. Another thing is to always press your fabric before you cut it with a pressing solution. That's super important to me. Learn how to use your ruler. Figure out where the lines are. Set a guide on your sewing machine that gives you an accurate 1/4 inch seam, which means you test it before you sew for good. You sew for sample a couple of times on little squares to make sure that seam is accurate. That to me is super important, and not to be afraid to rip something out if you have to rip it out, because if you don't, mistakes just compound themselves. They don't correct themselves along the way. If you've made a mistake, that's what a seam ripper's for.
Okay, suggest 5 tools that every beginner quilter should start out with, and why?
Well, a rotary cutter, and a good one. When I say a good one, I buy the cheapest one there is. This is mine.
Yeah, that's what I use.
Somebody told me to get this one. This is the Quilter Select. It's really heavy, and I'm giving it the college. I'm really trying. I'm trying to be objective with it. It's heavy. I'm not getting good results. People are trying to encourage me, and the jury is still out, but I'm telling you, this is my favorite. I love, they come in all different colors. I get a good blade. So if you've got that's the key. The cutter is not as important as the blade. If you've got, I like the titanium blades. I get mine from Fabric Hut, but I think those are really important because you have to change your blade when it starts to get dull. We don't want to, because they're expensive, and we try and get every bit of life, but we can do damage on our tendons, on our wrists and things if we don't. So good rotary cutter, meaning a good blade in the rotary cutter, and one that's comfortable for your hand. So that's important. Then of course, a good seam ripper. And I have my seam ripper here. This is just one. I've got all kinds of different ones. And I love, that's 2 things. I also use a stiletto when I am sewing, when I'm finishing up a piece, because pieces can tend to go crooked. And so I always use my stiletto at the end. I have, for my rulers, I use this, the 2.5 by 12.5 all the time. This is a big one, plus a 6.5 inch square, plus a 12.5 inch. If you're just buying the basics, those are the 3 rulers that I would get. I also, well, that's 4. And then I got all kinds of stuff here. I have a good pair of my little scissors. Well, there's 2 things actually. Pins are super important. And I like these. I like the magic pins that have the head on it as my flathead pin. But more importantly, I like the ultra fine pins that are, I don't know if you can see that. You can't
really tiny, like I like using.
Yeah, these are what makes precision work precise. Yeah. When you have a good pin. So these pins are really important to me. And that's all I have, is I have those, and I have the others. So I think with my good scissors that have a good tip, you want one that'll cut all the way to the end. These are by OmniGrid. They're cheap. I bought it on Amazon, and they are amazing little scissors. So if you have big fingers, my husband hates them because he can't fit his fingers in there, but I don't mind. So anyway, there's more, I'm sure. Those are my 5 go-tos. Awesome.
What advice could you give concerning how to take care of quilts to make them last a long time?
I just read something about folding them a certain way. Somebody had posted, and I've not tried it, but they folded it so that they fold it corner to corner and then fold it up, and they refold them periodically. If you don't, if you're not using them, if they're not on a bed or whatever. she had them, she said you have to continually refold them so you don't get those creases that won't go away. So that's one thing. The other thing is, we talked about this, not having them in the sunlight. I have a really pretty quilt that I have on the back of my couch, and I have blinds on my window. So I thought it was pretty well protected back there. And not long ago, I took it off and I noticed that it's all, not a lot, but there's some fading on the top that I didn't realize was happening. I didn't think that that was a big issue, and it was a big issue. So that's, you know, those two things, I think caring for a quilt is important. The other thing that I talk about a lot, and people don't always think about it, is putting a label on the quilt. That is so important because quilts increase in value when we know where they came from, who made them, and how long ago they were made. So if you put your name on it, you put your the date that you completed it, the name of the quilt maybe, and also if you put on the quilt the hometown or wherever you're from, so that they know where that quilt was made. I had a quilt that was an antique quilt that I bought that actually was valued by a quilt appraiser at about $900. It was an antique double wedding ring quilt. But the woman told me that it would have been way more valuable if it had some kind of an identifying label on it, and it didn't.
Yep, that makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. What advice would you give to a beginner quilter? This is for beginners only.
First of all, give it a chance. Because quilting, I think what happens as a beginner quilter is we look at a pattern like this and we say, oh, I want to make that. We don't, or a pattern, not this one wasn't quite as hard, but like the one I found in my book, I'm going to make that. And we don't realize that we need to start out something doable, something that's not difficult, even though you think, oh, but I really want to make the really fancy quilt. And yes, we do eventually, but we have to learn the basic techniques first. And so that's kind of what I try and teach, is that this is how you cut your pieces. This is how you get that accurate seam. This is how you sew those intersections and match your intersections and match your points. This is how you don't cut off your points. It's all those basics that we have to learn, the basics first. Don't be shy about that, and don't feel like you're wasting your time. It's so important that once you learn those, then you build on those basic techniques that you learned in a simple quilt. So much easier to create a more complicated quilt once we have learned those initial basics, that those instructions that carry us from just that first step to the point that we can call ourselves, you know, a confident beginner, where we know what it means to do this, and this, and to get that quilt finished in the end. So that's kind of, I think patience is huge when it comes to quilting. Mm-hmm. And I'm not always patient, you know, I don't, but you have to be to perfect the skill.
Yep. Let's see, do you have any other advice that you would like to give to any quilter?
I think quilting is a whole body experience. I talk about this a lot. It's mind, it's soul, it's skill, it's a physical thing, as well as an emotional and a mental connection, a spiritual connection, I guess we could say, to the craft, to the hobby. And I don't think that a lot of times we realize how beneficial this hobby is to our entire being. This is what, when you find something that you love, when you find something that you enjoy doing and you want to learn more and progress in that, people don't realize it doesn't just mean quilting, but when you have a hobby of some sort that you put your whole body and soul into while you're working, I mean, it creates those hormones in your body that calms you, that helps you physically. I mean, there are people that, you know, they'll get either anxiety issues or even just some physical issues, and they go to their sewing machine and they calm down. Their body then is able to heal. It works in a way like no other. And I think that's what we don't realize, that this hobby can do more for us than just give us a blanket. You know, it has all kinds of different things that, you know, the social aspects, the community aspects that also make us better people, make us better able to interact with others, and they give us a background and a boost when we need it.
Yep. Do you have any favorite quotes?
Any favorite quotes? Oh golly. Oh geez, I can't put me on the spot there. I've got them, but I don't have one coming out of my head right now. I like my, there's one, oh shoot. Let me see if I can find it. There's one that I have that's by Sophie Loren, and she talks about, oh golly, basically what youth is. Let's see if I can find it. Well, I can't.
No, it's all right.
I'm getting a bunch of pictures of Sophie Loren as a young woman but look it up. There's a quote about her about how the fountain of youth, is just, we think that it's something that we have to go drink from, but in reality, our fountain of youth is something that we actually gain from what we do.
Yep. Okay, so anything else you want to tell us or anything? Because I think we're at the end.
I think we're good. I think we are definitely out of stuff.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming to my interview, and we will get it out and ready to go. I'll set a date after we hang up. So
yeah, let me know, and then I'll spread the news to my group too.
So
we just topped we're almost to 22,000 subscribers. I'm so excited.
Nice.
So, and that was only a year. Not even a year. It'll be a year in August. So
wow, that's really great.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming to the interview, and thank you everybody for watching, and have a great day. And I'm excited to see what you learn about Mary. And later in the month, we are going to sew together. So we'll talk more about that as it gets closer. So have a great day. Make sure you live, laugh, love, dream, and make sure you create something. So have a nice evening. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.